about running a club.
As my favorite president
Click
said,
the button and show that you know you're being recorded.
Yes.
speak softly and carry a big
It's on my
stick.
soul YouTube right now. All right.
Yeah, so I used to be the only guy doing this lineage in North America, and now we're growing like fungus. It makes me super happy. We don't even represent the entire mushroom, we're just one slice of it.
Not even close.
Yeah.
One day, I hope we're going to have a giant sword party with all our sword friends.
Yes,
And-
please.
That would sound so horrendous out of context to anyone below the age of 15.
Their brains aren't fully formed yet. Hardly
Savage.
counts.
Sword power, sword power, sword power.
Sword power.
We'll have a saber tournament where most people are doing skis instead of sided stance.
Unless they get their pelvises figured out, at which point it doesn't matter. If you can stay in alignment with your feet like this, go for it. All right, I'm going to poke Troy and put him on pin so he stays in front no matter who's speaking. And then we'll go back to gallery for general jabbering. Troy has all kinds of stuff to talk about. And I'm just going to put him on the spot and say, okay, do it.
Okay, so
Do me a favor, if you're not talking, mute, just so we don't get background noise.
and do you have specific questions as well? Russ?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, but I want to let you talk first because a lot of people don't know you exist. And this is your opportunity to recruit a bunch of New York sword friends.
Oh, okay. So, hello, my name's Troy Medinas. I run a club, False Edge Fencing, in Brooklyn, New York. We meet up in Prospect Park every Sunday at 10. We typically run 1 to 2 hours, depending on everyone's availability. We always start class with basic warm-ups and drills. Then we move into whatever technique of the week. And then after that, we kind of move into a more advanced class, which typically involves sparring. This summer, we just got back from Brass Frog 2024 and are now going to start just kind of having a little more fun and playing with a few different weapons. The next one we're going to be doing is Foil from Augustus Fane. Which just has it's mostly thrust fencing that just has very odd stance, very fun. And then after that, we'll move on to doing a little bit of Fokosh. So that's me. A little Fokosh dance. So
And now we stare at you like a dog shown a card trick. So, you want to talk about running a club stuff or Brass Frog tournament stuff first?
let's do running a club first, because that'll segue
All right.
better.
So, teaching basic stuff and finding students. What's that been like?
That's been I think the hardest part of that was just the transition from being a student to then teaching. One of my favorite things in the world is being a student of anything. And I've been so lucky to have so many great teachers. And now kind of stepping into that role was a big transition. It was, and so what I kind of did is I kind of walked into it slowly. I really just started out with one student, Zach, who's in the call with us tonight. And kind of, yeah, I'm not going to say he was like the first pancake, but I definitely got to learn a lot teaching him. Kind of just like learning how to teach someone the basic mechanics of a cut, and then learning all the different ways that can go wrong and how to fix it. And I think kind of my style to teaching that is to just I kind of have a track of things I want them to learn, and I kind of throw everything else out. Like when I first get someone in the class, I want them to just be able to swing cuts 1 through 4. I don't care if it's online or if it's good mechanics. I just want to make sure that they can get their body moving. Then after that, I try and get their hips into it, make them cut just using a straight arm so that they're not just chopping. And, you know, from there, I just keep refining things more and more. As far as getting students, that has been a big challenge. As the HEMA community in New York actually isn't as big as I thought it would be. There's only like 2 other clubs I'm currently aware of. So what I've mostly done is I have an Instagram that I post on. And then I put us on the HEMA Club Finder, which got us a few people. And then just word of mouth has been pretty big. And we've even had a few people just like kind of walk by and then get our info and message us later, which has been I think the most fun way to get a new student.
I think that's one thing that we have to do a lot of, because the HEMA community is small, and if we only go to the HEMA community for recruitment, we wind up poaching each other, which is no good. We want to grow this pie and get lots of sword friends. So in Brooklyn, are there nerds? And
yes.
Are there nerds who like swords? And how can you get in front of them?
I've had a number of ideas. That kind of just, and then that starts to bleed into like work-life balance at the moment. Because when I started teaching, I had moved up here for grad school. So it was kind of just kept getting pushed back. I was like, okay, I'll start recruiting after grad school. I'll start heavy recruiting after I get settled in my job. And it, you know, and I'm just starting to get to this point where I'm like, oh, okay, I have time to do some heavy recruiting. And so I have a number of ideas. I know there's people who do, I kind of wanted to look into like the LARPing community, because I'm sure there's a bunch of people there who would be more interested in a more historical context to their sword play. And also there's just a bunch of kind of nerd communities around, board game shops, D&D clubs, and whatnot. So it's just really about getting out there and actually advertising, doing the legwork, which it's like it's all different skill sets too. It's like, you know, knowing the system, learning how to teach the system, and now how to run a club. Yeah, exactly.
So if anybody wants to pipe in, just unmute and say something. We don't have to be formal about this at all. The only goal is just to make sure we don't trip over each other.
Yes, please.
An alarming percentage of our students are familiar with 40K and painting miniatures, and it's a constant source of discussion. And after sitting hunched over a table for a long time, they want to get up and actually move. So that may be a really good recruitment pool for us.
A lot of my students are actually into 40K. I haven't played since high school, but the allure of that plastic crack is always there.
I may be executed for this, but what's 40K?
It's a tabletop war game.
Plastic crack is crazy.
Yeah. Set in like a over exaggerated future.
Not that exaggerated.
That the British one. Yeah, so there's spaces to explore for recruitment. I think one of the other hard problems about that is student retention. We've had lots of people come in, and I gotta say, like, I have such a hard time getting a read on who's gonna stay. I'll have people stay long after class talking and seeming really excited, and then just never see him again. So If you have any tips for student retention, that would be nice.
I wish I did. We have the opposite situation. Anybody who shows up and survives one day of drill basically just stays. But I have a different beginning strategy than you. The first day is my weeding class. I make you do the battle pancake, and you stand there and you do cuts, and you stand there and you do cuts. And if they show up on day 2, I know they're here for it.
Oh no, that's my first day. It's all cuts there. I take them separated from everyone else and just cuts until they get it down. And then we usually move into blocking second day.
Huh. All right, how about the rest of y'all? Any ideas?
I had a question about something.
Yeah.
So I read the book, well, a lot. I instruct a small study group of people in Naperville, Illinois. It's about 4 right now. But I've looked at the book and I'm like, wow. And I looked at your YouTube channel, Russ, and I've only seen like 2 guards, like a stance or a pose you typically stay in. That's the center guard, obviously. You keep it in the middle, hand, there it is. And the I think it's called like high preem or something, but it looks like this, where you keep the point out, and it's like hanger, I guess. Is there any other guards in the Hungarian system that are not commonly discussed?
Troy, you want to field it?
So is that going to be what's the other book? Because we don't have preem.
The Hussar manual in the back of the book does have preem.
So in our club, we stick mostly to the cavalry section. And no, we don't have any other guards. We have been talking about recently, what was the word you called for it? The
opposition parries.
Opposition parries, where we will, from our middle stance, start to take one side, but we won't bring ourselves into anything kind of more extreme, because our whole system is based around keeping our hand in the center and keeping our alignment. As soon as we move away from alignment, we've lost a lot of the advantage that our system gives us.
Austin can tell you something about opposition parries and how they work. You want to tell the story, dude?
Oh, they're so much fun. This was my favorite thing. I got a buddy who got into HEMA about the same as I did. We're both pretty much newbies. We've been in it for a couple months. The last time I went down to see Russ, he showed me oppositional parries, and I'm like, how does that work? And it's very, very, very subtle. Like, you begin a parry, and Russ is like, you can totally close off a line like that. And I'm like, that's weird, until I tried it on my friend. We were doing a little sword vacation way out in California, Northern California. Fun time, great time. But I wanted to try out this oppositional parry because my friend likes this very sided stance. He's reading the Dierkes book, and he's doing the side stance stuff. I have a problem where anytime I'm fencing somebody, I get information overload and I get decision paralysis. So to kind of just, rather than thinking of, oh, I need to hold dead center and just wait for him to pick a quadrant at random and hope I have enough reflexes to just pick a side, I'm like, I'm just going to close the side off. I'm not even going to think about this side anymore. I'm going to think about these other sides. And we had one exchange. It was absolutely amazing. He comes into this side, not really noticing that I've begun parrying that side. Boom, I'm already there. I'm like, oh, this is great. And as soon as he left my bind, something that we talked about while we were out there is that the bind gives you so much information, and that leaving a bind, you have that tactile sensation that's way, way faster than your eyes can kind of register. So I'm just like, boom, he left my bind. Okay, we're switching directions. He's not going to stay here. His 2 fastest moves are either going to be over here, up high, or down low. So I just watched the angle of his sword. He did this, and I'm like, oh, we're over here now. Boom, boom. And then he continued on down low, and I'm like, as soon as he left my bind, I'm like, oh, we're moving again. And I just watched the angle of his sword, and I was already there. Pow, 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 and then just returned to guard, got him in the wrist. It was awesome. Blew my mind.
And that's like just such a perfect example of what our system's strength is. We're not the quickest. We don't have to be fast, because what's faster than that is just already being there.
Yeah.
If you're already there and you just all you have to do is drop your wrist.
Yeah.
It's done.
It was amazing.
You don't have to move quick.
Yeah, it was super, super fun.
And I do want to point out one other thing about the oppositional parries is not only do they kind of close off one line, you also get to bait someone in with by closing off one line, you're opening something up, and then your decision making is, you just don't have as much you have to think about, like you said.
Oh, look, I've closed this. So therefore he's got to come either here or here. It's going to be one of those two. Which is it? Oh boy, it's that one.
Yeah, it's the same mentality in the Olympic saber. You're always closing your outside line in your regular underguard.
Yeah, it super makes sense.
I do have a point about that, but I'll save it for when we talk about the tournament.
Yeah, we'll
unless we
want to. Second. Last
Yes.
thing I know you wanted to talk about for the club thing is club life balance.
So,
because we want to add this to our lives, not make it define our lives, right? Uh-oh.
I think we lost Troy.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Troy's dead.
Frozen face.
Oh,
Everybody
no.
poke fun at his frozen face while he reconnects.
Come back to us,
I
Troy.
saved this image.
All right, I'm gonna hit pause for a second while he reconnects. There he is.
Oh, he's back.
Alright, he's
That
back.
There we
looked like the
go.
dream face reveal.
All right, did you hear
Yeah.
me, Troy, or did you lose volume while I was speaking?
Oh no, I heard you guys. So something I like to stress at the start when someone comes into the club is that this is extra. This is on top of your life. If something happens, don't stress over it. Don't stress over not being able to make it to class. And I think that's really important, especially coming from some other martial arts that were a lot more intensive. What are we doing here if we're not having fun? I mean, we're playing with swords.
My years of feeling guilty because I can't make class one night and putting up with guilt trips for that shit are long done.
Exactly.
That went away with the color in my hair.
Oh, so pretty
you still got some
recently.
color.
So I try and stress that. As far as for me, there's always like a little trouble of like how much time I can put into crafting a lesson for the week, which was also kind of like a transition because when it was just me and Zach, and for a point where it was just me and Dion, it was very easy to just not go in with a plan and just think, student, I go in, I see what they need, or they tell me what they want to work on, and we just do that. And now that we're starting to grow, we have about 3 or 4 people who are coming consistently. Now it's a whole nother thing. I'm like, okay, what about, I gotta actually figure out what we're all gonna do this week and fill out the time, which I've actually really been enjoying now. It's about a 40-minute subway ride to the park, so I usually bring out the book on the subway and kind of figure out what I want to work on that week.
Product placement.
Yes.
Can you show us the book you bring out?
Oh yeah. Not within arm's reach.
That's
In a
okay.
bag
I've got
somewhere.
product placement up behind me.
Yes, the book's up there.
Yes, with Cat's glorious covers. Hire Cat for all your book covers. They're amazing.
Yes, you should.
Not
Yes, we
one of
have-
them is in the same style, which is even more amazing.
or the same media.
All right, so Troy, are you ready for the question?
Oh yeah, I know this. What I know which one's coming.
All right, I'm going to keep it on gallery for this one, okay? So,
Mhm.
Troy, you went to a tournament. You got to meet a lot of sword friends, and you went down like a frozen turkey on a WKRP in Cincinnati episode.
And
Yeah, I got somebody. Somebody knows that meme. Okay, so you went down in flames in pools. You went down so fucking hard. Tell us about it and what it was like.
Wait, before Trey speaks, can I get a link to the video if there is one of like the tournament? Because I have not seen it.
I
I
don't
could send
have.
those later.
Yeah, we have files, but I don't have a specific link. I'm gonna do a sort of celebrating Brass Frog because it's an awesome tournament and class kind of thing. The tournament's actually not the most important part of it. He just does that because a lot of HEMA guys won't show up unless there's a tournament. And I'm basically gonna make it more about Brass Frog than about us. So that should go up on YouTube at Humana. All right, talk to us, Troy. What was the whole experience like? Because other
So
newbies need to know how to handle this.
so I want to throw this out there. None of us should be surprised at my performance at Brass Frog. This is the first tournament I've been to in over 5 years. I've only ever been to 2 other tournaments, and I've been off teaching alone for about 3, almost 4 years now. There's a lot of experience I don't have. One of it being tournament experience, which is now a whole separate thing from having experiences in a club, fencing the same people every week. You go into a tournament, you have to deal with a little more stress. You have to figure out how to fence different styles on the fly. And you got to figure out how to get out of your comfort zone of like, oh, I'm fencing Hungarian against Hungarian. So I'm not disappointed I lost in pools because that's exactly what was going to happen. And I learned so much. Like, I mean, Rush just said about Brass Frog not being about the tournament. It's really not. Like, if I had done the tournament at the end of Brass Frog, I think things would have been completely different.
Hold on, can you unpack that for people who aren't you and Dion and Kat?
Yes. So getting to fence, so the Brass Frog, we have the tournaments kind of at the start, and then there's just a lot of time for free sparring. So we got to spar against just so many different people, so many different styles, and so many saberists who have been teaching this for years and years and years. We got different perspectives on our fencing, just the whole time, constantly. And it was also also having Russ there to kind of coach us while fencing all these new people. It was just kind of like an information overload. So I think just one of the biggest things someone should take away from going to their first tournament, or maybe their first tournament in a while, is that it's just that. It's your first tournament. I think what the big takeaways from me and Dion were, look at this giant community. We brought our faces into the community. I know it's, you get there and everyone kind of already knows each other. It's like, okay, well, next year or next tournament in the area, I'm going to know this person, and this person. We exchanged a lot of phone numbers with people. And have one friend who's already trying to get us to go to the next event, which is exactly what we're looking for.
Is this next event in the summer?
Um, well, I can't remember. I'll bring it up in class.
All right.
But I mean, when it comes down to it, it's about the fencing community, and the tournaments are kind of when that community gets to come together. And that's what we got to, experience.
I summon the disembodied voice of Dion.
Yeah, my first takeaway from that tournament is that I really want to fence more people. It's just invaluable to fence other people. Past 2 years, in the historical contests, I've fenced like pretty much only Troy and Zach with a few other people sprinkled in. You get used to how they fence real quick, even though they're both, learning off of me and progressing. It's still like the experience of fencing someone that you haven't fenced before. You feel like instant progression. And coming into Brass Rod, that was the first time I fenced anyone that didn't do our system, at least historically, and that was jarring. I like Troy said at the end of Brass Rod, I think I would have done a lot better in pulls than I did coming in.
So to that, I did have a lot of observations about our style versus, I don't want to generalize so much, but the majority of other saber styles, which I think from where we stand, they just they all seem so much closer together than us, or more related. And it just kind of seems like whatever game they're trying to play, we have to play the opposite. Like we come in with an oppositional parry. I found a lot of people actually just giving me the bind. Like they wanted to come up and have our swords in a bind.
Yay!
Which is exactly that's exactly what we want.
This is a
my-
surprise tool we'll have for later.
Exactly. My problem came with not having the experience to know what to do with that. Exactly. But
They give
found
you the
a-
bind.
exactly. I found a lot of people.
Oh, but
would give
when you
us-
bind with me, you know what to do immediately.
Yeah, right. Our in-house wrestler.
Because you love to tackle and you're the one who caused me to not be
Cry,
able to go
Jason.
to
Cry,
class for
Jason.
like 2 weeks.
They're weak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like 5 years older than me. So is that really my issue?
Everyone else in the club's like a decade older than me. It's fine.
all right. Fencing
Let's reel
granddad
it
here.
back.
Fencing granddad here. Jason, footwork. He cannot grapple you if you cut him in half like a cucumber.
We
you're
weren't even
maintaining proper
fencing. He
point,
just
good
he just
point,
like
good point.
grappled onto me.
All right. 2 points
Okay.
against Zachary for unnecessarily roughing the teenager.
More points.
I'm still
than
a
that.
teenager too.
So for Troy and Dion, I kind of tuned you up that first night while we were waiting for our gear to show up. How significant was that compared to just getting out there and getting to play a lot of people? Because you guys did fight a lot of people in the team tourney thing. How'd that work for you guys?
They were different. I want to say, how do I put this? Fencing people in the team tourney, I think, gave us, what's the word? Fencing people in the team tourney, I think, reinforced bad habits we were doing. Getting the tune-up put the idea of good habits in our head, and it wasn't until sparring with people after the tournament that we actually got to use these good habits. Like we needed, getting a tune-up was great, but we needed that time after the tune-up for it to actually sink in. Because we went from the tune-up in the evening to tournament first thing in the morning, and it just it didn't feel like it quite stuck. And I think that's mostly due to just not being able to play with it and get things wrong a few times. Because I saw a clear progression sparring people where like the first few people I sparred after the tournament, I was, playing around with these ideas that Russ had tuned us up with. And then by the end, I was actually being able to put into practice those ideas, not just trying to figure them out.
Cool. Dion, similar, different?
Yeah, similar. I mean, for my context for my situation, I was stuck in standstill traffic like for 30 minutes before I got to the tournament. And so I came in late, and I was lucky enough that they let me come in and just like fence everyone in my pool at once, with 0 warm up.
Which is still better than getting scratched, but woohoo!
Yeah,
That's rough.
So, I'm flustered. I tried to apply some stuff that you tuned me up on, and I did get some points with that technique you were showing me. And similar to Troy, yeah, my best fencing was after the tournament, sparring people. Perhaps that's also a pressure thing. I'm not worried about points when I'm sparring. So it could be, I'm better without that tournament stress. But probably 20% that, 80% actually being warmed up.
And I also want to point out, I made a point to spar people who were in my pool afterward and ask for some feedback about how my fencing was different from in the tournament to then us sparring then. And I think the biggest compliment I got at the right there at the end when we were just about to leave was, "Oh, now your fencing looks much more Hungarian." And I was getting more points or hits, touches. I think another thing about all this is we were also using the wrong weapon. This was a dueling saber tournament. We're using something a lot lighter, and which just feels awkward. Trying to do heavy hip cuts. So there's also a transition of changing up how you're cutting. I don't think you have to change your mechanics completely, but there is definitely a shift.
You did have to change for whoever ref you had, because there was some problems with false edge cuts that I think Russ might want to talk about.
Well, I started with our lineage and then had to abandon it because none of the slices were being accepted as quality hits. And I was being told they weren't being accepted as quality hits. Because they were judging by, every pool's different, but they were judging by sound and they were wanting percussive hits. So at one point I stabbed somebody in the hand. That wasn't noticed. That's actually sometimes hard to see. So that's legit. And other times I had cuts that would have just, pulled off half of someone's arm because I made a slice through the armpit with the false edge. And if you know anything about the false edge,
It's nasty.
you don't need a percussive hit there. That's like boning a chicken. I won't even get into the anatomy of that because, you're into really gross stuff there. But when the hits aren't being accepted, it's like, oh, this ain't going to worky. So I switched over to playing Arlo. I find the weapon itself to be not such a big deal, You just have to be able to adjust for the fact that the balance is closer to the hand rather than further forward down the blade. And that does slow our parries down a little bit. But it also means that once we actually do this, that blade is out there like lightning. So it's just, grip towards the bottom of your grip, so it has more of that hammer feeling rather than that well-balanced right underneath the guard position. And then it starts to balance similarly. Yeah, so Griffin's got his saber right now. And if he drops it all the way down to where the bottom of the guard is, rather than holding into the cross, the balance will relatively be, yeah, what Jake's doing now. You can hold that dueling saber, and let's call it by the real name, fencing saber, and it will handle much more like a cavalry saber with the balance because you've shifted your hand 2-3 inches back. So now you've got something that's balanced closer to what we're used to. Now, then your grip is funky and everything else is weird, and if you adjust on that like day of tournament, everything's going to be really bloody weird. Because that's how that works.
Yes.
Day of tournament coaching is like, okay, I'm going to try this while also trying not to get evaporated. Yeah, so I played Arlo, and that was okay because Arlo's a Chad. We love him. Go ahead, Troy.
No. Oh, I do want to say just about the pools. I had a lot of my false edges called, so it really just depends on the judge. I had at least 2 under the wrist.
Good. The only ones I had called were when they were clearly percussive, and the big swipes. None of my little cuts got called.
Yeah. A move I found I was getting a lot of hits off of near the end too was coming in on their outside line. This is kind of a second or third intention, but throwing a 1, and people would do these giant hanging parries, which would then leave this whole beautiful wrist open for a 2. And I felt like I was hitting that a lot. And those were also some of the cleanest ones, because then it was just back to guard retreat.
That's also one of the ones with a lighter weapon, makes the little tiny coupe action much faster. So that's one we're keeping to where our style does things. That particular action is very easily a bread and butter for us, where the lighter weight weapon actually makes it easier to weaponize. Where if you had the heavier, more forward weighted saber, you could still hit that, but you'd have to move your body a little bit more to make it happen, and it wouldn't be quite as convenient.
No, it's not as easy to move that big heavy tip around. It's less responsive.
Yep.
Yeah, just kind of wanted to observe that. I guess our positioning really opens that up for us really easily, that the hang guard isn't prepared for, because when you make that 2, you move to the position where their arm's open. Whereas you wouldn't on a sided linear stance.
Nope.
Not at all.
Which comes to one of the other questions that I know Troy wanted to talk about tonight, and I want to throw it out to the entire group. So I really want people to not be shy here, okay? Especially some of you who I know are shy. And that is the difference between knowledge of a system and fighting or fencing experience in general. So Troy, you get first crack, but then I'd really like to hear experiences and ideas and stuff from the other people too.
So, I mean, the biggest example of this is this whole conversation. I've taught a bunch of people our system. They have a mechanical knowledge of how to throw heat with their hips. We've gotten that connection to people. But then that doesn't transfer at all to fighting in a tournament. It's just simply a different skill set that you have to train up just like anything else. Which unfortunately, it's a skill set you don't get as much time to train up. Like, you can't go to a tournament every weekend.
No, because we don't do longsword.
Exactly. I'll check that comment off my bingo card.
It's not inaccurate, so
All right, who else has something to throw in on this? Because it is a real feature, and it's a real issue, especially for us being weirdos. You know, we have a less popular weapon, and many of us are sort of off in our own corners. What do we do about it?
Yeah, the whole tournament thing it's a mental game, right? Back when I used to do MOFFA, I would always sort of term it as fencing is 20% physical and 80% mental, like a mental chess game. And that goes very the same for HEMA. We just have more tools in our toolbox, right? But being able to actually perform in a tournament and, go through pools, do they call it direct elimination in HEMA tournaments? I don't actually know. But go through the different segments of a tournament. It is a trained skill that you can only really train up by doing it, because you have to have the stressors there. And, being in a less popular sport, you get less of that, unfortunately.
And it being such a tight-knit community, you end up going to tournaments where everyone else has been to dozens and dozens of tournaments. So you need to really pick up that skill quickly.
Go for it,
Kat.
Kat.
Yeah, I wanted to jump on what Jake said about the specific stressors of a tournament. And they are like very different than just sparring in your club or meeting your friends on the weekend to swing sticks at each other. That specific adrenaline and dread and oh god, what's going to happen?
Butterflies.
You got to practice handling that. And you only get that in the specific tournament setting.
Question, because I've never been to a HEMA tournament. Do they yell at HEMA tournaments like they do in MOF?
No.
Okay.
Not nearly. Like, yeah, I don't think I heard a single yell at Brass Frog.
Yeah. Okay.
Brass Frog used to
Yeah.
have a guy who was part of the Athena group from Boston, if I recall correctly, who was really well known for yelling. But it's much more rare than in modern. The Olympic League guys yell all the time, and we yell very, very rarely.
Okay. Yeah. That's another, I guess, different stressor, because I mean, even that in the MOF game was a potential stressor, right? Because you're not just playing this whole touch game against someone. You're playing a mental game to break them down inside their head, because you get inside their head, you win. It goes the exact same in HEMA. I imagine if you go up against a style that you've never seen before and you don't know the ins and outs, and let's say I'm a sided fencer and I'm like, okay, well, I do sided. Russ probably knows better than I do, a very lunge sided thrust centric style in which I'm throwing my cuts only to set up a lunge, right? So that I can thrust my point in. Against a system like ours, if we're really dialed in, that's not going to work very well, right? It might just completely break that person mentally. And if they don't have any other thing to fall back on, they're like, well, I'm screwed, right? And that can really affect how they fence, which is juxtaposing that to, what you were talking about, the post tournament bout fencing, you don't have those same stressors, because the goal isn't so much I want to win, it's I want to, have fun and kind of explore systems.
On the other side of that, though, I think something that does make Brass Frog very special is there was not one bout that I saw where I thought the other guy was trying to be an asshole to get into someone's head. Everyone I saw felt like they were fencing in good faith.
That's good.
Which definitely brings down that stress a little bit when the person across from you is kind of in it the same way you are.
Culturally, that behavior is not acceptable not Brass Frog for certain. I've seen it in some other tournaments, and I've heard discussion of it in some other tournaments I won't name because we don't need the drama. but Brass Frog is definitely one of the ones where that's just culturally a non-starter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in modern saber tournaments I've been in. Like there have been times where people will like take advantage of the rules by like jumping high in the air and tapping on the head because like it's not target area. Like I don't think I would, from the impression I got from Brass Frog, I don't think we'd ever see something like that.
Yeah, no one wants to play the Korean game at Brass Frog. It's just very, very different. Yeah, they like to sproing way high in the air and go doink, screw your fifth.
I have seen that a lot actually when I've been watching Sigieron. Whenever he was fencing a Korean guy, they'd go up in the air. It's like, oh, that's
yeah, they like
weird.
to weaponize the vertical plane, and it was a logical move for them as a team. It's going off tangent, but I'll explain it real quick. They were a team that really wanted to do well and had no budget and couldn't afford any of the things you need to get into big Olympic play. When Olympic fencing, especially saber, is a really expensive, money-driven sport. I mean, no matter how athletic we are, we as a group could not do well in Olympic saber because we simply don't have the resources to get coached properly. So they came up with a completely new paradigm for their footwork just to throw people off and make them spend time garbling while they executed on that. And you can see the high-end Korean fencers are absolutely capable of playing the traditional game, but they've also got this weird shit they'll pull out of their pocket whenever they think it's appropriate just to mix it up. It's kind of like doing rapier and rubber chicken rather than rapier and dagger. Now that I think about it, I really want to do small sword and rubber chicken.
That sounds hilarious.
Is that why you said you wanted to get some rubber chickens earlier today?
No, that was because, the glove game sucks. I hate the glove game. We could play our version of the glove game with the monk's walk step, with the passing steps, but use rubber chickens rather than gloves.
The glove game does not suck. Bite your tongue.
I was about to say, the people who were doing really good at Brass Frog were warming up with the glove.
Yes, because to quote the guy's book out on the internet, who I haven't even actually read it. Actually, I've read bits of it. I haven't read through it. It's a phrase that's been around forever. Footwork wins fights. And you can look at the people who won and the people who got really, really close to the top, and they all had the cleanest footwork. When I got knocked out of elims, I got 7th, which is, the kissing your sister level of, okay, you did good, but you're nowhere near the brass ring. For those of you who are too young, it's like, hey, you kissed a girl. Yeah, but it was my sister. Oh, never mind.
Not nearly as impressive.
A peck on the cheek from your sister is not the same as a peck on the cheek from
a stranger
who thinks you're worth pecking on the cheek, right?
So they still give you a medal. I
got evaporated in my last bout in elims because I came in with a method he hadn't seen. Arlo was starting to fail on these guys because it was too close to the modern game. So I switched to earlier Arlo in high tiers. Once the guy got the distance, he, with classical fencing training, was able to add that much distance to his lunge. And it was enough that he got past my parries. So in a 5-point round, I put the first 2 on the board, and then he just ran the next 5 in a row.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the undying words of the great Turksidian muse, I got my ass kicked, yo. So how about those of you who are remote, who occasionally get to play with folks? What's your plan for getting in front of people or getting some experience playing around?
Just doing it, I guess. There's really not a way around it. The only way to get practice at fighting somebody in a stressful situation is exactly that. I've got a nice little group that meets out here on Saturdays in the park. It's just kind of a catch-all mixed steel, 90% longsword. Hey, let's spar and see what happens. And that's been somewhat good in that it's helped me remove the stress of fighting. Not so much I didn't really learn much the first couple months I was out there because they didn't teach anything formal. But as far as going back to the earlier point where that's different than tournaments, I think the only tournament I've actually been to is that exhibition one we did down in Atlanta, Texas. And yeah, I was nervous and I went down there and I got creamed and it was great. It was a lot of fun, and I don't know what a good answer to that is other than just, yeah, let's do it.
We're going to keep doing St. George's, and at some point we're going to run. Hold on. Still a little bit sick. At some point we're going to run a tournament just so that everybody has a chance to get used to that stress.
Good.
My idea was to run one here where we're playing so people who are in the lineage can come down and get tuned ahead of time. And then everybody local-ish can come in with whatever weapon they want as long as it's not a longsword or a rapier.
Yes, good.
They want to do small sword, great. They want to do back sword, great. They want to do basket hilted sword, great. They want to do side sword, great. They want to do rapier, go home.
Get out.
Get out.
42-inch long rapiers are attorney standard. I'm sorry, when you've got 1 foot reach advantage, we don't need that in a mixed weapon tournament. It'll just turn into a rapier tournament. That won't teach any of us what we need to know. Plus, they get lots of rapier events. They don't need it.
Poke.
Yeah.
Poke.
But if you think we're lonely, imagine being a basket hilted or back sword guy in HEMA. Or a messer player, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Them's lonely.
Them's very lonely.
So what Russ said actually did remind me, and this might require a larger club, but something that I used to do back in my MOF days, or my club used to do it to help with the tournament stresses, is we would have in-club unofficial tournaments. Like one practice night, I'd be like, all right, tournament, whoever wins gets like some arbitrary prize from coach. Of course, we were a competitive club, so it was more competitive environment. And we also had like 20, 30 people sometimes.
Yeah.
So you can actually run tournaments like that instead of if you have 4 people in your club.
Yeah, I had the same thing going on in my Olympic foil club. Just random surprise tournaments with like 20 people, and whoever wins gets a chocolate bar. Yeah. But for me, how I deal with Hungarian versus different systems and all that is I literally just study the other systems and see how they like playing the game. My second favorite is the Polish saber system. They're very tricky and very good at moving their hands and moulinets and all that, hiding their attacks or doing a lot of attacks in like a single second. It's pretty amazing to watch. But a good example is that one of my students, he's a foil fencer from one of my clubs I was going to. They just shut down for the summer. But I'm trying to train him and he keeps using the saber like a foil. And it's really frustrating because every time I parry him off to the side, he overcommits because he's not used to getting grabbed because he's an Olympic. Right. So I grab his arm and I twist it and I'm like, I don't even hit him because I don't even feel like it's necessary to hit somebody who can't even do anything once I get the grapple. But it's just interesting to see how like different, if you hand a Polish fencer the Hungarian saber, they're still going to use it like a Polish saber. Right. So I still read up on the techniques from like YouTube or, random Reddit posts on how they use the saber. That's kind of my idea of how to at least get more knowledge in your brain to deal with different styles of play.
And I don't remember who I laid it out for, whether it was Saturday. Couldn't have been Saturday. I was sick. I laid out for somebody. Oh, I know. It was Kevin when we were in private. Laid out the differences in strategy between what we do and what the Poles are doing for the cross-cutting stuff, at least as it's been reconstructed, which I think is more legitimate than a lot of HEMA fencers want to actually admit. It's basically a preference for a couple of specific techniques which we know were in play. And it's actually a really, really mild difference from what we do. The fundamental difference is how we hold the weapon and how we cut. And that changes the geometry, which makes it look very different. But if you're dancing around using your moulinets and playing footwork and distance and trying to deceive people about what you're doing, we have a word for that. Fencing.
Hey.
Right? So yeah, we can definitely play around. I know one thing Austin has been doing, Griffin, I'm going to encourage you to do it if you can get somebody within distance. Go bully a longsworder.
Yes. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
They
I haven't done
love
that
their
yet.
longsword. It's
Well,
good.
What do you mean by bully? Like we fence them with a saber and they
Yes.
fence
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
does that
our
work with
sabers are
distance?
heavy enough to parry longswords easily. And even the relatively lighter weight fencing sabers, if you're parrying properly on the strong and you're using your alignment and you're using your footwork, you can absolutely lock them out and make them very frustrated.
Huge
Maybe we
selling point by go sorry, Ed. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Troy, maybe we should give Gotham a visit.
Yeah.
Or better yet, Troy, bring your long swords next time we're at Prospect, so we could do some mixed weapon.
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that too.
I'd love to use the longsword. I want to try it out.
Yeah, but best is if you have a skilled longsworder because A, they'll be glad you showed up. B, you give them a game they're not used to, which helps them for their mixed weapon game.
Yes.
And C, you get to find out whether you're bullying the longsworder or you're getting evaporated by the longsworder, which means you've got something you can learn from them, and that helps
Yeah.
keep you sharp.
It does.
Austin, we all like collectively interrupted you. Go for it.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say that that is a huge selling point. Anytime I tell people, like most of my longsword friends, and the occasional person on Reddit, that somebody will be like, "Hey, I'm checking into swords. What kind of sword do I want?" And I'll be like, "Saber. Did you know you could parry longsword with saber?" And everyone's like, "What? That's not real." And then you do it, and then their mind's blown, and then they want to try out saber, which happened to my friend Hunter, because he's a
Hey.
huge longsworder, and I drug him down.
Yes.
I drug him down to Texas, but before I drug him down to Texas, I was over at his place. I'm like, "Pick your longsword up. I'm going to show you something." Bing! He's like, "What? That's not real." I just did it.
I think sabers are these light, dainty little things, and they're incorrect.
Yeah.
They're not.
Even
It
the
reminds
light
me,
dainty one, even
oh.
the light and dainty ones can parry a longsworder.
Oh, for
I
sure.
can't remember her name off the top of my head. It's a Rada alien in Taiwan. Just had a video out a little bit ago where she was parrying a longsword with an Olympic saber.
Ooh,
Wow.
that's good.
Please do link. I want to see
That's
that.
like a third of a pound, and pop, pop, pop,
Boink.
pop, done. Pop, pop, done.
Surprised it didn't snap. Those things are like car antennas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get weak on strong.
Yeah, I got that confidence for the strength of a saber parry when Troy picked up this big log and had me block it.
Oh no, was there a log? Tell us this story, Zachary.
Oh, please.
Oh, I always
Well,
love hearing log stories.
I pretty much just told him, but he was telling me that if I have the right bone alignment, right edge alignment, I could just block whatever.
Mhm.
This, where we do this, we practice in a park outside. This is very large branch. I would guess 8-9 pounds, maybe. He just swings that at me. And I remember I was really scared. I'm like, okay, this goes to my block. I'm knocked out. And I do other martial arts. I do MMA. I've been knocked out before. It's not fun. I'm like, okay. I did everything he taught me and I blocked it just fine. My sword didn't budge an inch.
Yay.
Got all the
So
confidence.
KO or
Some-
TKO?
Oh no,
Zach,
I've been knocked out.
Zach,
Okay.
your next step is to parry a bullet.
Oh, easy.
Yeah, light work, no reaction.
Easy,
As
yeah.
far as the log's concerned, we have to keep some club traditions alive.
Yes.
Yes.
If your parry is good, you need not fear log. Go ahead.
We actually got that on film at St. George's Day. One of our members, Jacob, he has a YouTube channel called The Green Rook. I'm going to plug him here, where he posts some of the stuff we do. And he got it's called Log. It's like its best video, right? It's called Log.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And he was like showing, because Trevor brought out his really big log, which is like, it's like shorter than this, about there, and it's about
Hang
that
on,
big around.
I'll go grab log real quick.
Yeah, go grab log. Show them your log. It's an immense
Tell
log.
the story while he
Massive.
goes to get it, so we don't have
Caveman
to.
weapon.
Yeah, and so, the first thing on that video is Jacob pairing it with a wooden waster. It snaps it in half because it's a wooden waster. And so, yeah, so I grab my steel, which is, a proper Hungarian style sword. And, Russ swings it at me and I take the block and it just thunk. Yeah, that right there.
That's a Dark Souls great club right there.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I blocked that thing with a saber.
And stopped it dead.
The only thing I was actually scared because I knew that I could take that block on the strong. What I was terrified of, I have a very thin guard, so I was terrified of that, like coming down, crushing the guard. Because I have a very bad habit of catching blades on my guard.
Turn it right into a blunt force damage weapon.
Yeah, crush my hand.
Yeah.
But no, I was able to, as long as you get the strong, no issue whatsoever. I could block. Just trying to think like what.
You could block a sledgehammer.
I could block a sledgehammer. Yeah.
I think. Yeah,
it'd probably break the sledgehammer.
Yeah, you can block a halberd.
Yep.
And then have them hook the blade, and then you're wrestling.
Yeah, here they come.
But hey, we've
Yes,
played we
nice.
blocked spear.
Yep.
That's always a fun game.
Kat, you unmuted and then remuted. Do you have something?
Nah, dumb joke.
Oh, do it.
We are for dumb jokes.
Now you gotta share.
The dumber the
we are
better.
for the jokes, yeah.
Pretty please.
Can you block a wrench?
For the younger audience who didn't
Movie
who
Dodgeball.
might not have.
The movie's called Dodgeball. It's like a 2006
Screw you,
film.
Zach. Yeah, you're not
I was
that
talking
much
about
older
me,
than me.
Jason. I was talking about me. I
No,
didn't get it.
no. You said
I
for
didn't
the
get it.
younger audience.
I'm the younger
Children.
audience.
Zach is.
Jason,
Yeah.
we're
younger
both
Younger
teenagers,
audience?
Jason.
You have an
Jason,
ID.
we're both
I
the-
don't.
Don't make
I have a
me mute
college
you,
ID.
children.
I have a college ID.
Children
Alright.
fighting.
Still don't even have my permit.
All right,
But,
so we've been
thank you for
going on
context.
about an hour. If people have to do evening things, does anybody have any closing thoughts, especially Troy and Dion and Griffin and Austin, who are long distance and sort of off by themselves, although anybody else is super welcome.
Yeah, I had a thought.
Go for it.
Oh, go for it.
Okay.
So my close.
all right, no, you go ahead. No, I've already asked a few questions already.
No, go
yeah,
ahead,
so-
Griffin.
Yeah, Griffin.
Okay. My question is that I've read the book a lot, and I haven't seen any like grappling techniques, with the exception of a few YouTube videos that you made and like lunging people that lunge. Yeah. What's up?
If you look on the first or second page of the book,
Yeah.
it says we have no grappling techniques in this book because if you grapple, you're a bad fencer.
Yeah, I was leading into a question with the grappling techniques. So what do you do against a fencer that like is a grapple fencer, like Messer player, different cultures like German fencing, like the German longsword people are very all about, you get too close, you get grabbed, right? Or you overcommit, you get grabbed.
Two things. One, you learn just enough grappling to escape the grapple. So we had a local buddy named Corey come in and give a Stretto class one day. So everybody be like, oh, you want to close on me? Okay, fuck you. Here's where you die.
It was a really good class.
So that people can learn, oh, they're closing. It's time for the elbow push. Boom, go. The other one is footwork.
Yeah.
If they want to come in and start doing snail sex and grappling, but you step offline, hey, that's their fault, buddy. And then you cut six and cut them in half like a cucumber, and it's
Yeah,
done.
they go that way and you go.
Yeah.
Grappling, the unromantic truth about most wrestling style grappling when they're bulldozing in is it's extremely linear and highly committed. If you can hop offline, they don't make the grapple. So know just enough to get back to your game. Don't play into their game. And then make sure your footwork is dialed in so that if they charge you, you can simply get offline and let them do the bull in the china shop shit. Yep.
And
right out the door.
as an experienced wrestler, I can say for a fact, that will work every single time against the wrestler. Stepping offline and cutting without fail. Unless the wrestler is already at a distance where their guard is like their hand is touching your hand, and for some reason you got in that distance, they are not going to be able to tackle you or go for a double leg or any of the sort. If you just have like yourself in the regular or standard center guard, and you can just tiny Molinet cut one as they're going in, or step off the line and do whatever cut. It'll work every time.
What will tend to happen with longsword guys is they'll throw in a really strong cut one from our perspective, and then they'll do a deep committed passing step so they get into core distance. And you know how you beat that? You give a little distance and you let them walk right under your point. Or you turn and cut two while they're doing it. And sure, they've gotten close to grapple range while you're dragging your saber across their mask.
Nice.
I've noticed that some of the grapples I've experienced, well, had the shame of getting grabbed, right? They noticeably like overbind my sword away from me. So even if I do step offline and they fail to grapple, especially with a saber or one-handed sword, like a side sword, like let's say I'm fencing them in center, they'll push my sword off to the side, and if they step in, and if I don't step off, then I get grabbed. But if I try to step out, they like cover thrust me at the same time. Do you have anything against that?
Well, if they push your sword out like that, what you want to say is thank you. Because while they're pushing your sword out, they can't be hurting you. So you just take your false edge underneath and you hit them.
Okay.
Or if they do it and they're super close and they push you out here, you smack them in the ass with a false edge.
False edge exists, and it's useful.
False edge can go over or under.
And false edge to the top of the back of the thigh hurts like fuck. So be gentle if they're your sword friends. If they're being a jerk about the grapple, light them up. You will know the social context, which tells you which is appropriate and which is not.
Yeah.
If it's an appropriate, technical, proper grapple, give them the love tap with the false edge that says, hey, you committed to core at core without actually commanding my weapon. Big mistake. Help them learn. If they're being jackasses, make them hop a little bit.
Give them something to remember you by.
And if
not
all of that
far,
fails,
but unfortunately, some of the more aggressive grapplers in HEMA land can be out of line in their behavior.
And if all of that fails, you can do my favorite thing, which is
it works. He does
Get
it
away.
He does it to me whenever I get too handsy.
He gets close. I step off line, push.
And it works.
A surprising amount of times, yeah.
And
then you can go back to your game.
Nice.
The old stiff arm.
Yep. All right, Troy.
Closing statements. Try and get out and meet other clubs as much as possible, and realize that when you're going into a tournament setting, it's just another learning experience, and you're just gaining you're gaining experience that everyone who's steamrolling you has already gotten way more of. So there's no shame in just learning.
Underpin. Have fun.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. So anybody else got anything before I close it down for the night?
Yeah. Sabers are awesome.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sword
Sabers rise
friend.
up.
Yeah, so far,
Saber power.
every form of saber I've tried has just been very fun.
Yes.
So I'm enjoying that.
Woot. All right, let's go out and make some more saber friends.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, good night, everybody.
All right.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Feeding y'all.
See you later.